somehow our presentation are a little bit related because I'm going to talk a little bit about how to evaluate how the involvement of users in the process of designing a user interface for application can be evaluated. So there are some relationships somehow. First of all, I have to say that I'm a researcher, an assistant professor at the Department of Computer Science and Engineering at the University of Bologna in Italy. And I'm going to talk a little bit about user interface, involving user in the process of designing them and so on. But what is a user interface? First, I have to say that a user interface is like a joke. So if you have to explain it, it is not that good. If I have to add some instruction, some written information about how to use something, it could be an application, could be a software, could be any product, any object, then it means that its interface is not so good. But the user interface, the topic related to the user interface falls in the field of human-computer interaction that could be also called ACI. So we have to talk about user interface, but also interaction. And what is a user interface? And what does interaction means? Your thought? Typing something, yeah, that's good. Typing something could be an interaction.
Communication.
Well? Communication. How can I have to communicate with an application, so I have to use that application somehow. So, but let me show you some picture. Okay, what is this? A door, okay. And how can I use it?
Kick it.
Kick it. That's fun, very nice. How can I use it? Okay, how can I say in English the name of this? Handle. Okay, so I suppose that I have to take the handle and then pull it down and then or push or pull or something. I cannot tell right now if I have to push or pull, right? Maybe, oh, I can do something else. So what about this? It is again a door, but I have the handle, but seeing that door, I suppose that I have to slide the handle, right? In order to open the door. And this, like this. So it is something that I cannot tell at the beginning how to use, how to interact with the interface of that object. And what about this? I have to do what?
Pull either one.
What?
You can pull either one.
Pull.
You have a choice.
You have a choice. You can push or pull, but you cannot tell in advance if you have to push or pull. You have to try it, push or pull, and maybe it could be a little bit painful somehow, right? And I've got some instruction, written instruction, push and pull, but that means that this kind of interface for that door is not good at all, because a user interface is like a joke. If you have to explain it, it's not good. Okay, so we agree with that, right? And what about this? This is again a door. Which kind of door is this? It is an emergency door. How can I use it? Exit, right? But I can just push. There's no other way to use that interface, the interface of that object, right? So the only interaction that I can do with that is just push. Why? Because it is an emergency door, and the idea behind that kind of interaction is that, okay, you could use, probably, I can assume that you have to use that door in an emergency situation, so there's no time to think about, okay, how can I use this door? Should I push? Should I pull? Again, there's no time, and there's no time to try, there's no time to read the instruction. And that is the best way to have an interaction and to have an interface with that kind of object, because there's no doubts. I can just push, and it works. Luckily, and hopefully it works. Okay, so ACI, human-computer interaction, it's composed by two realms or systems, humans and machine. And the interaction is how they communicate, how they interact, how they work together. So the interaction about them. And sometimes we have got this situation. Can't you do anything right with our machine? Or there's another comics very nice where the user punch the computers, because sometimes we do not understand our computers, but very often the computers maybe do not understand us. So it is a not so easy communication between us and the machine. And the idea is that a user interface and the interaction can support us, can support such kind of communication. Asking to my students what is an interface and what is an interaction, after showing them a series of pictures like this one we have already seen about all the doors and so on, they gave me some answer, just like, okay, the interface is a point of interaction, a tool for interaction. It is the area where you touch or connect, where you interact. It is an exchange point. So again, the idea, the topic of the communication among the two systems, the two realms. And then the interaction is communication, verbal or not verbal, standard or not standard, or an activity starting from the user side and aim at a purpose. So they are, all of them are right, are correct. And we can say that the user interface is coming back to the door. The user interface is this was what I can see, and the hello, and the interaction in this case is push, and the purpose is open the door and go out or go into a room and the space. So taking into account the human side in the ACI topic, in the ACI field, we have to say that it should be clear that the user is the main character. We are the main character in this kind of communication, in this kind of the relationship. But how to design and develop an effective interface? How to improve the quality of the interaction of a user interface? Involving user. Try to involve user as much as possible in any kind of steps of the process of design, develop, and test an interaction, an interface, and an interaction related to an application, to a software. So we have to say that the role of users is at the basis of many ACI methodologies in design and creation process of computational artifacts. And we are seeing currently that ACI methodologies are evolving, and the role of user is becoming more and more active. That means that right now we are witnessing at a more involvement of the users in the design process. So the user is really becoming the main character in several steps of the most commonly used approach for the development and for the release of application and tools. One of these kind of methodologies, actually we can call it approach, it is better to call it approach, is the user-centered design. It means that the idea is keeping the user at the center, in the middle, keeping the user in mind at every step. It is an iterative process in an iterative way of designing and developing application or products where a team of designers focus on user needs in an iterative way. So the idea is having an idea, design, measure, adapt, plan, research, and again and again and again. But it was defined more than 30 years ago. And again, the idea is having the user at the center of the design process. But is it enough? It is the best way, keeping the user in mind, keeping the user at the center. Actually, we can use different kind of involving user, of methodologies and approach of involving user. For instance, the participatory design. The idea is letting the user actively contribute to the design and content development process. That means that the users are involved in the process as co-designer. So the team is not composed only by professional designers and developers, not only by computer scientists, programmers, and engineering, and so on, but also a group of target users should be involved. So user can propose and generate design issues, functionalities, services of the application or of the project being designed, and should result in having some functionalities, some services that the designer could not have in their mind, for instance. So it supports different ways of planning and thinking, making application and products more responsive to human needs. Obviously, it is necessary to have clearly in mind the target user of the application of the products in order to involve the best group of users in this process. In participatory design experience, the role of designers and developers blur, while the role of user become a more prominent component of the process. So again, we can say that the user is having a more active role in this project, in this kind of project. But a different level could be intended as co-creation and open innovation. Have you ever heard about open innovation? Yeah? So the idea is that having an active collaboration among different kind of entities, different kind of organization, and having co-creation processes involving user of a specific product or service in exchanging their knowledge and resources with the aim of delivering a personalized experience. So it is, again, a different level of involvement of users in the design process. Which kind of methodologies, which kind of ACI techniques may we use? There are plenty of them. Some of them directly come from the marketing field. And we can talk about target user analysis using personas and scenarios. Again, this is something more related to user-centered design approach, so keeping the user in mind. And then storyboards, sketches, and mock-ups, so having something drawn on the paper before developing a real prototype. But again, we can keep in our mind the user without involving a real user. And then we can use focus group, experience prototyping, and co-design with a user-driven design approach. Let's talk a little bit about focus groups and experience prototyping. Have you ever heard about that? Have you ever used that? Have you ever been involved in some of that? You say yes, yes? Okay, great, great. Okay, so talking about focus groups for the development of user interface for application software and so on, and products like in digital products, digital technologies. We can say that this is a methodology used to explore and discover advantages and disadvantages of a limited and predefined set of functionalities and features starting from a target group of end user and some storyboards and mock-ups. So the idea is developing a group of end users, having a moderator and co-moderator, and presenting them some mock-ups, some prototype at a very early stage, and asking them for feedbacks related to some specific functionalities, some specific services, and some specific elements of the user interface of an application. we are talking about pretty small groups of users, for instance, ranging from 8 to 15 persons. The idea is that moderator and co-moderator should record all the feedbacks, all the comments coming from the user. Keep in mind that all the users should contribute in the same way, so try to avoid that people do not provide their feedback, or other people maybe talk just like me all the time, just to be sure to collect feedbacks from everyone. So the idea is that during a focus group session, moderator and co-moderator should gather opinions, beliefs, attitudes about issues of interest in the project, test assumption and initial idea, encourage a discussion about a specific topic, and get an opportunity to learn something more about a specific topic, issue, services, or functionalities. Different is the experience prototyping. Okay, the idea is to involve very few users, 2, 3, 4, because it is pretty time consuming, this kind of activities. And give them a prototype, ask them to complete some tasks with the prototype. It should be just written on the paper, or a drawn or a sketch on a paper. And then ask them to complete, or ask them to vocalize in a think aloud protocol experience their thought about the interface. Okay, you have got this kind of interface and you have to complete this task. What do? You push this, you swipe this, you vocalize something or whatever you want. It is very, very useful in mobile context. So the idea is that you can exploit it when you are developing a mobile application. And this is an example of actually a prototype, a very raw, at a very early stage of a project, a prototype that we have exploited. So some screenshot printed on the paper and put on this just to, with the right dimension of a mobile phone, just to give the user the idea of having a mobile phone with the mobile application in their hand. But how can I say that having a user involvement means a better interface? Is it true? Is it not true? Because involving user in such a process is pretty cool, because we can obtain a lot of information, a lot of comments and feedback from them, but it is time consuming, it costs, it is resource consuming, so it is not easy at all to manage to organize such kind of activities. So our question in this field was, is user satisfaction proportional to real user engagement in the design process of an application? And do applications resulting from a co-design approach better meets user expectation than the one resulting from a user-centered design? So, in order to answer to these questions, we compare two experiences we have conducted at the University of Bologna: the local app project and the My Alma Orienta project. Okay, the local app project is a European project, an Erasmus Plus project, coordinated by the University of Bologna, and it was carried out by a transnational consortium composed by the University of Bologna, obviously. May you help me pronounce the yeah, Pozna in Poland, and the University of Lapland in Finland, in Rovaniemi, and the Center for Social Studies of the University of Coimbra in Portugal. So the idea was to design and develop a mobile application for incidental learning for four cultures and languages: Finnish, Italian, Poland, and Portuguese. What does it mean, incidental learning? Have you ever heard about it?
Informal learning place?
yeah, it is informal learning. It is a form of informal learning. The idea is that you are doing something. It is pretty related to the concept of serendipity. Yeah. The idea is that you are doing something, but you are learning something else, something that maybe you do not expect. Yeah, and the idea behind this this application is it was thought for mobility students at the university, so Erasmus students, exchange students, international students, and overseas students, equipping them with the mobile phone application, giving them all the information related to how to rent a room, how to call a doctor, how to open a bank account, where is the office for international students, information about, leaving the tips at the restaurant, for instance, if it is something that it is expected or not. And so on for international students, but at the same time providing them information about the language and the culture. So it is not a mobile application to let the user learning the language. It is not a traditional learning a second language application, but at the very end, the goal, the purpose was equipping them with some tools that allow them to learn also the language of the hosting country. And we have applied the user-centered design approach. We have exploited personas, scenarios, questionnaires, focus group, and experience prototyping sessions at the four partners. For instance, that was conducted in Bologna, but this was conducted in Coimbra. That was the prototype developed by the colleague in Poznan, and so on. Another project was the Alma Context Experience related to the My Alma Orient app. This project was born from the need of equipping high school students of tools to support them while they are approaching the university, they are choosing the degree, and they are and giving them information about the admission process, that it is pretty long and not so easy at all. It depends by the degree that you have chosen and so on. So you have to take into account that the University of Bologna is pretty huge. We have over 200 degree programs, so the choice could be not so easy at all, even if you have clear ideas. For instance, we have four different degree where you can learn computer science with different kind of characteristic. Okay. The 200 degree programs are distributed over 5 different campuses in 5 different cities. So it's pretty huge. We are talking about 90,000 students. So it's a lot of students. Every year we manage a fair where high school students attend in order to decide if they would enroll or not at the University of Bologna and which kind of degree they are going to choose. And 30,000 students usually attend such kind of event. So it's a lot of people, a lot of users. So we decided to equip them with the mobile application to support them while they are approaching their undergraduate program and becoming a freshman. So we decided to use co-creation and the participatory design involving students in the design process. But it was pretty hard to identify the community of users to be involved, because the target community is high school students. But they have to be involved in the design process, but they could not provide some prototype or some very specific idea, just like in the co-creation, in the co-development of an application. Why? Because they do not know some rules. They do not know the complexity of the program. They do not already know how to enroll at the university, how to choose the program, how the university works. So we decided to involve two different groups of users in this process. The target community, so the high school students who are the real target group of users. And then university students, because they have the appropriate level of expertise about how the university works, what it would have been important to know to take a decision, but they are not necessarily aware of the real needs of the next generation of students. So they already, how can I say, crossed that kind of decision, but we are not really sure if they are not anymore the target user. So during the event, Alma Orienta, we involved more than 200 high school students with the voluntary activities in a user-driven innovation phase. And we asked them to, on a paper, to write their needs, what they need in an application, what they do expect, what they want in a mobile phone application to support them during the event in the fair, and in choosing their degree program. And then we involved high school, our students, university of students in a contest with the open innovation approach in designing a prototype of application or proposing some ideas. And this was the award ceremony of that kind of event involving our university of students. Okay, but then what? And then we have developed two prototypes for the two applications in these two experiences, and we have tried to evaluate it. We have involved two different groups of users coming from the two different experiences. Users who have previously taken part in the design activities as group A, and users who did not, who have neither bias nor specific expectation about the application and their purpose. So we have asked them to complete some task with the prototype, running prototype on their mobile phone. And then we asked them to complete some questionnaires about the experience, about how the trials was conducted. Okay. We have tried to do what? We have tried to understand the user satisfaction about the experience of using such kind of application, about the interface, and about the application itself. And we have to say that we have obtained positive results, and also about the easiness of use of the interface of the two mobile applications. But the most, try to answer to the previous question, if application resulting from participatory design approach better meets user expectation than the ones resulting from user-centered design, we can say that we obtain better results, more positive answers from user involved in the co-design process, as we expected. But what we do not expect was that we obtain more positive answers from users who were not involved in the design process, instead from the groups involved in the design process. Maybe this can be due to a bias. So group of users involved in the design process, they built some expectation. Maybe they did not find their suggestion in the developed prototype, and they answer in a positive way, but less positive than the user who were not involved in the design process. So conclusion, we can say that we obtain better result coming from the user involved in the co-design process, coming from the application, evaluating the application resulting from a co-design process. So with the more active involvement of that user, and this confirms what? The importance of actively involving target user in the design phase. But we have also to take into account what? That we have a lot of potential issues that can affect the whole process. Time constraints, costs, and also resources that have to be obviously taken into account when you are going to develop a product, an application that have to be released. So a feasible balance should be identified, try to involve as much as possible the user, but taking into account time and cost constraints. And that's all. Okay.
Thank you very much.
You are very welcome.